This month, the WP Minute is supported by WP Engine. WP Engine recently acquired popular WordPress performance tool, NitroPack. Now users can combine the rock-solid hosting platform of WP Engine and give their WordPress sites the boost they need from the same company. Learn more about WP Engine hosting at wpengine.com. Use code WPMinute20 for 20% off or 4 months free on startup, professional, growth, or scale plans at wpengine.com. Use code WPMinute20 for 20% off or 4 months free. Thanks WP Engine for supporting independent WordPress media. Enjoy today's episode.
Mark Szymanski, welcome back to the WP Minute.
Matt Medeiros, always a pleasure, my friend. Thanks so much.
You rushed home from the grocery store. Your wife sent you out, said, go get some damn food for the house. It's Friday. We've eaten everything. Go get it. I text you. I'm like, hey, man, you want to record some stuff? I'll be home in 20 minutes. Did you leave the eggs back at the store?
I should double check. I should double check on the items. Yeah, but
I walked into
I'd rather be here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I walked into a grocery store the other day, and I was just like, I know this is probably going to sound kind of weird, but like I have my groceries delivered because I walked in. I'm like, I'm going to be here for an hour and a half. I just want it DoorDashed. I don't actually use DoorDash. I use the store's like built-in service. But I'm just like, I just can't get out of that mode anymore. I know I'm spending 15% more, but I don't want to be in the store doing it.
Time is valuable. It's not just in that. It's in WordPress. It's in building stuff. It's in whatever. It's in life. Time is very valuable, and if you can make more money, then you can, you can just deploy in different ways, and sometimes it can buy you back time.
Mm-hmm. That's what I feel anyway. Anyway, what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about WordPress content creation. I think that's a fun topic. There's a lot of folks coming up these days starting their podcast, their YouTube channels, their newsletters, and talking about it from two perspectives. You've been doing it now for a few years. I've been doing it now for over 10 years, and just talking about maybe the lay of the land and what's working, what's not, at least from our two perspectives, and what we want to see from other content creators that are out there. Like, what are they doing? How are they approaching this stuff? And maybe we have some particular feedback. For me, at the WP Minute, I'll just kick off with one of the things that I've been pontificating about and really came up with my friend Corey when we were talking about stress as an entrepreneur. And Corey was also in the WordPress, still is. I mean, he still is an owner, a stakeholder in Post Status, but now he has a full-time gig at A2. This whole WordPress content thing, especially for us old folks who've been doing it now for over a decade, it's challenging because what I've found is, one, everybody has a newsletter, which is great. Like, I love the fact that everyone's publishing content and doing this thing, but everyone has a newsletter. Everyone's doing their link sharing like I was doing at the WP Minute when it first started. Everyone's got a YouTube channel now. I think everyone's exploring the idea of starting a YouTube channel. I'd love for people to explore more of the audio experience, and maybe we can talk about that in a moment, but everyone's doing it, and it's making it harder for those of us who have been in the space to retain the audience. And especially the audience that I serve, which I call the Fortune 5,000 of WordPress, because I think there's only 5,000 English-speaking people or 10,000 English-speaking people across the entire world, maybe 5,000 of them being in the US or UK area. And it's becoming real challenging because there's just a lot more options for people. And maybe people are burned out at the same time of like tuning in to WordPress content. And you have an interesting perspective because you have your thing and your YouTube channel, your newsletter, and you're doing it much more from like, hey, I'm learning WordPress. I'm trying to make a living with this stuff and learning the fun, cool stuff with WordPress. So it's still kind of exciting to you, I think, not to put words in your mouth.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, a lot of different things there. Obviously, we'll dive into each of them. I mean, I think that first, I think the things that I've seen again is I've talked about this before. We've talked about it, but just the difference in like you said earlier, the level of experience, and like I'm probably learning things. You probably like watch me like learn things. You're like, I know exactly where this is going. I know exactly what he's going to think next. He's going to run into this because he's learning X, Y, Z, and then the next thing is, I learned this back whenever, right? Like in the come up days of whatever. But I think the landscape has changed in WordPress from what I've seen historically. been a little bit personal, like had personal experience with, and then also want to, like things that you've talked about, things that I've heard, things that I've just, discovering the history of it. I think definitely a lot has changed. And I think we're in a real interesting time now where, again, we talk about it all the time. There's like other things out there. There's other options, which that's a separate topic in and of itself, but it does play into the idea of like, okay, well, there's a ton more content now. It's always going to be like this too. There's just gonna be more and more YouTube content. There's gonna be more and more whatever. And it's important to kind of like, you got to somehow differentiate, which just gets more tough as things get more saturated, as these channels get more saturated and such. And then the only other thing that I was thinking about just from the initial, overview you gave there is, I think I've said this before, in a world that's becoming more and more artificial, it's more important than ever to become like as authentic as possible. And that is, there's a couple ways that I slice that, but one of the ways is specifically that everything that I've seen in this community and elsewhere, everybody is like going back to like having the personal branding aspect of a lot of things. And that's one thing that I've leaned into. And I think people connect with other people. They connect with brands too, and communities as well for certain. But like, it's like, there's just something about that I've taken into consideration. So if you are going to start, if you're out there and you're listening, you want to start making content, I would just recommend just doing it under yourself. Like just say, you don't need to overcomplicate that part. Just like be like, hey, I'm so-and-so, I work with this stuff. Here's what I'm doing. Here's what I'm interested in. And people will ultimately start to find you. Cause that's the one good thing about the space we're in now. The algorithms are pretty good. Like, I mean, if you put out like half decent stuff about like a specific topic, they will recommend that to people, not overnight, but it will happen. So.
Yeah. I mean, I was going back in the archives of when I started my YouTube, and the big picture thinking that I have in my head right now is these tools. Like right now, we're recording on StreamYard, and then I'll edit in Descript, and then I'll probably live stream this from the WP Minute podcast channel, not the WP Minute tutorial channel, which are two distinct YouTube channels for various reasons. So the tools are just getting better, easier, faster, and like connecting up to these social networks. There's so much opportunity in like repurposing content where I was looking back at my original YouTube videos that I started from my studio, 11 years ago. And like my first video was recording a review of gravity forms, which I work at full time these days. So it's kind of funny how that came full circle. But back then I was trying to do it full, air quotes, full high quality production. We had a whole studio. We were a photo studio and a web studio at the same time. So we did a lot of video and photo back then. And I remember recording it with a Nikon DSLR camera, and I could only get 15 minutes on an SD card, right? Like that's as long as I could record because that's as big as the SD cards were. And then I had to like import all of that data into a laptop, which could barely handle it. Because these things were just not, like you needed a $10,000 computer literally back then to edit those videos, where now you can do it on your iPhone. Right now, I have like $8,000 worth of Sony equipment sitting back in my home office, and I'm using my iPhone right now as the camera. It freaking drives me nuts that I've spent so much money, for, an effect that it is not dramatically different compared to like what I can do with this, $1,000 iPhone camera. Also laughable. But, the world has changed in content creation, and it's great that lots of people can get into it. My biggest criticism, I don't have a direct question here, but I love your thoughts on it. My biggest criticism has always been, I want people to get started, but I don't want people giving up, right? Like I want people to at least do it for a year. Like at least commit yourself to a year, because at minimum, like that's the only timeline that I know of where you actually see traction. I mean, unless you're just a unicorn and you're putting out like ridiculously, ridiculous hit after hit on your content. But if you're just like, hey, I'm just trying to get this WordPress YouTube channel thing going, you got to give it like a year, man. Like I don't know any other way to do it unless you're just a savvy SEOer. And what happens is when people give up, it detracts from that quality, like detracts from the rest of us. Especially if you're like being celebrated and you're seeing this stuff come out. I'm not saying like it's bad if you can't like proceed, but I've seen people just like give it a half-ass attempt and then just like ruin it for the rest of us, right? And it's like the $500 website builder who doesn't care about the customer, right? I've seen this happen time and time again, and that's not of interest to me. But I don't know if you have any perspective on like lack of trying or lack of quality, or like what your thoughts are. Like what do you think? Like when you started, like did you think it was gonna take this long or faster? Like what were your thoughts?
Yeah, so I don't know, a couple things there. I think the first thing is that I would never discourage people from starting to do something. And it resonates with me what you're saying. Like you have to try. You have to actually want to do this. I'm gonna give a quick relation. A lot of times like people ask me how to get like more clients or how to get more influence. Like if I'm talking to like a client building a website, like they'll ask me for marketing advice, so to speak. It's like, how do we get more clients? And I'm like, well, how have I gotten more? I know how you can get more clients. You can do SEO, you can do pay-per-click, you can do whatever. But how do you actually get more clients? Like, what are some proven ways in my mind? Well, one of the ways in my mind is literally just start talking on the internet about the things that you're interested in and the things that you are building up expertise in. That is literally all I have done, and that's what so many other people have done. Now, granted, there are a lot of variables there. There are like how experienced you are, how comfortable you are in front of a camera with a microphone in front of you, how much experience you have just doing that in the past in any, other facet of your life. It's just like a litany of things there. And those are the things that start to really trip people up, I feel like. But to go back to what you're kind of saying there is, yeah, I think that if I'm telling somebody to get into content, specifically like WordPress content, you're probably going to make an impact. Like if I could give the playbook for what I did, like, and I'm not saying I'm big by any means, but like I've gained a little bit of traction. People know, like I know people now, like, and stuff like that. And like I make content and people, I guess, appreciate it to some degree. Like all I've done is just talk about the things that I was doing, some of the things that I found out how to do, tips and tricks here and there. And then I started exploring and learning WordPress, and I was just kind of documenting, honestly, is kind of the way that I've always thought about, just documenting my thought processes, asking questions, being curious. And people really start to appreciate that because a lot of people have the same questions. And there's just a lot of people out there that are not ever going to be content creators, so to speak, because that's just not what they want to do. Like there's a more meta thing. I don't know how deep you want to go into it here. I think everyone like could potentially start making content, but the trouble is like I truly believe that not everyone is a content creator necessarily. Like that might just not be the case for some people. And not only that, maybe some people are really good on video. You know me, I literally hate to read. So it's like, I'm not going to sit there and write a bunch of stuff. I'd much rather just talk like this. But other people are totally different. And maybe they'd rather like write a million words and never want to get in front of a camera. So there's just those different types of things. And I think that all of that kind of plays into, again, back to the main question of you can start, but sometimes you might not be starting in the thing that's best for you to continue with. And maybe you're just starting because, oh man, YouTube is like the real big thing right now, which is objectively kind of true in certain ways. But if you're not built for video and you don't want to get better at video and you try to get better at video and it's not working, then maybe it's just that's not your tool to leverage. Maybe it is blogging or maybe it is podcasting or something else, right? I mean, again, I hate video editing. None of my videos, barely any of them get edited, right? So it's like, it's a lot of it is introspective though. But at the same time, I do think anyone could be successful. They got to find, where they're kind of at with it and what makes the most sense for them. So
Do you like time wise, like where do you feel like, did you have any goal or what was your perspective on like how long it would have taken you to get to, grow this audience that you've accumulated so far? Is it faster than you thought, shorter? Like what's your thoughts?
I would say that it has gone better than I actually expected, probably slightly worse than I like quoted on myself. Like I had like a random arbitrary goal of like 10,000 subs by the end of the year or something. I mean, I'm at like 4 something, but I'm not even saying that's like the right metric to even go by or anything like that. Like there's so many different things there. If you're talking specifically YouTube, there's a lot of stuff there. I would say it's going better than I actually expected because of the other things that I've done. So if we're talking playbook for content creators, you have to be like a type of person that wants to grow and is actually curious about what you're talking about. Before this WordPress, I was always involved in like WordPress, but before I actually dove into this, I was very scattered and I didn't have like a niche or a community whatsoever. And then when I started making content about WordPress, it's like, okay, now they know that Mark Szymanski is WordPress, or like, like it has, those are assimilated to some sort of like, those are related rather than Mark making random videos about like business, finance, home remodel, like whatever the hell I was doing before, right? So to like what I've done is you have to be on, if you want to do it, at least one strategy is like very boots on the ground, so to speak. Like you're making content and you're also like on X, like following people and talking to people and getting in the conversation. You're potentially in the Make Slack group, like doing stuff there. You're in the WP Minute Slack, like talking to people there. Like you just have to make connections. My mother used to always tell me, it's all about who you know and you got to be networking. It makes total sense now, but it didn't make any sense when like you don't have somewhere to network with. You can't network with 7 billion people. You got to network with the people that like are actually going to move you forward and help you, and you can help them. So that, I mean, I've just made so many good connections. And again, I think that's a skill in and of itself. You got to be able to build rapport with people. You got to be an actual, genuine, authentic person. You can't be like a slimy, bastard. Like you have to actually want to help people as well as like have other people help you. So I understand that that's like not necessarily directly related to making content, but it is like a huge thing that's a part of it, because that's what making content is. Like even connecting with your audience, if you're going to start a community or offer a service or a product to them, you have to understand them. And we're humans. We normally understand stuff by communicating and observing and all that. So I would say, again, to answer your question with a long-winded answer, concisely, I would say that you have to, it's gone a little bit faster because I feel like I've kind of like made it go faster because of those efforts. And if you don't do any of that and you're not connecting with anybody and you're just making videos, you might see yourself being like, why am I not getting more traction? It's like the people they can't connect with you. Like if they connect with you, then they're going to care more about the stuff you're saying. Like it's human nature, I feel like.
Yeah, I have a cynical outlook on it.
I'd love to hear it.
Not to anyone's surprise, I guess, but like it's a blessing and a curse, the WordPress community, especially for content creators, because, on one hand, like outside of our world, people hear WordPress and they're just like what kind of content could you possibly be creating? And like, what kind of reach, what kind of audience could you possibly have? If you went like full on just like web design in general, like a general web designist or a general online e-commerce person or drop ship company, like this, the audience for WordPress is so small relative to like other hot topics in the space, like generally like in the tech and business stuff, not like pop culture, but like in those categories that are like adjacent to us. But interior to WordPress, there is a lot of content being made for the WordPress crowd. And I think from the audience perspective, like we're looking for something new, right? So like, and I'm not saying this is what happened to you, but maybe part of it is like there's this stimulus of, oh, there's a new guy out there, a new gal out there doing a YouTube channel. Let me tune into them. I just want something fresh and new. Right? I'm sick and tired of hearing from like Matt Medeiros in the WP Minute because I've been listening to him for 10 years. I need something new. And then there's a weird formula. It's a weird dynamic because you come in and you're talking bricks and that's popular. So now it's like you have like this popular like tool that you use and people are excited for it. And then there's a fresh new guy demonstrating the stuff and talking about it. So then you get this like sweet spot of, a content rush. And inside that WordPress world, it's pretty competitive. Kind of mean it in the literal sense, but also like pragmatically, like people are just like, okay, I've got my fill of Mark for the month. Let me move on, to, something else. Like, okay, I liked it. He was for me, but just like if you zoom out and you look at how you tune into your favorite podcasts or your favorite shows produced by, big names or at least, big industries, you don't listen to every single one. Like I love the Bill Burr podcast. Love it. But I don't listen to every single one, but it is still like, I still regard it as one of my favorite podcasts to tune into. And it's just him talking into his phone. Literally, that's what he does. But I don't tune into every single episode. So it's this weird thing that happens inside of WordPress where all of a sudden you can get like this meteoric rise, air quotes, and then all of a sudden it's like, wait, where did everybody go? Like I'm on this plateau. Like how do I get to the next step? And I think that's where we as content creators have to be cautious of that because I've felt it. I feel it every day. It's like, man, I have this YouTube channel. If I just kept doing YouTube, it would have been like 5 times, greater than this podcast and blog that I've been doing, this traditional podcast and blog that I've been doing, so I've seen it sort of like that content tilt, or that audience tilt, like what they're tuning into and like where the industry is going. Again, I don't have a direct thing there. It's just a lot of thoughts on like in that space. We're lucky for the WordPress community, but at the same time, it can make us hit a plateau pretty quick. And we're like, where the hell did everybody go? And why aren't they paying attention anymore?
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
So, no, it does. I definitely have a couple things. Okay. So the first thing is like, you're 100% accurate there too on the pieces that you added there. Like for me, again, as my case study goes, yeah, I did come in kind of like with some bricks content, which is like on the rise, like as I was coming in and everything like that. So that definitely helped me. I think me being young definitely helps me to some degree because, again, it's more just like a fresh perspective on it as well. Probably a little bit out of the ordinary to some degree. Like I said, I mean, I feel like I've seen a lot of wisdom in this community, and I'm like one of the younger dudes that are just kind of like learning and also kind of providing some perspective. So I do think that probably helped. And I've thought about what you're saying here a ton. When you're hot, you need to capitalize on it. Like you can't let the attention or the views or whatever, like kind of, you can't miss that opportunity. And I've had this happen in other like sequences of my past like content creation stuff outside of the WordPress thing. It's just opportunities though, is really what it is. It's like hitting like a viral video or like a viral topic per se at the current time where it all lines up. And I think if you have enough of those, you continue to kind of like scale, I guess, to some degree, but you do have to take advantage of that opportunity. So I've already thought of like, well, should I start like more of a community thing, or should I offer some sort of a service product or something like that? And, it's just really, again, though, you have to listen to the people. But the thing I'll say is about the plateauing. This is partially experience, partially speculation, or just a theory here, is the thing that you can't do as you go through that is we as content creators are providing value. There's no doubt about it, but it is very like intangible. So it's like, if there's a way that we can provide something that is more tangible and is like more impactful and more valuable, that is how the people are going to have a less likelihood of like forgetting about you, so to speak. And there's many different ways to do that. The trouble is you just need to like try them or try one and see what sticks or whatever. And that's kind of really where I'm at right now. But I'm like so observant of all the other people that are in the space, like doing it, and like kind of what I see like is working, what I think resonates with me, what resonates with other people. So again, going back to the playbook thing, like those are the things I would be thinking about as I would be like starting to create content, watching to see how it's growing, seeing what people are saying, and then how to kind of leverage some of that and capitalize on some of those opportunities without being, my personal opinion, like just like almost a sellout per se. You know what I mean? Like you still have to be authentic, because that's the other way. You could go too far with that, with the opportunity capitalization, and you could just be doing things simply for the money, and then that could also backfire, the money or the opportunity, whatever XYZ, and then you could also backfire because people will just be like, at a certain point, like you could have 1 million viewers on a YouTube channel but have no community. Like that's that's very possible. So it really depends too on what you want. So there's a lot of nuance in this conversation, but that's what I've seen from not just WordPress, all over.
Yeah, I was thinking about that actually this morning or yesterday when I saw, do you know Peter McKinnon? He's a video editor.
I don't watch him too often, but yeah, I've seen him in the past.
So like when I was just like really spending a lot more time in YouTube and getting more serious about it and like doing more filmic stuff, I was learning how to edit and whatnot. He was somebody who was just doing tutorials all the time. Had some great tutorials on when I was using Adobe Premiere, and I was learning a lot from him, color grading, editing, yada, 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 transitions. And it was fun and entertaining. And then he started to, broaden out and start doing more product reviews. And, I've fallen off. And then I know he's doing like collabs with Casey Neistat and other YouTubers. And he really went from like sub 200,000 to over 7 million, at this point. Yeah. But he literally has just become, for me anyway, in my perspective, he has just become just another like influencer brand person. Lewis Howes is like has the same effect on me. Like I knew him personally. I worked on WordPress websites with him way back in the day, but now it's just a brand to either like sell Canon cameras or his Peter McKinnon specifically sell Canon cameras or the Peter McKinnon backpack. Or I just saw him launch like this new like film holder thing, like this high-end premium, like just traditional film holder case. And it's just like, all right, man, like I don't even see you do any original content anymore. Like you're not connecting with the audience anymore like you used to through your tutorials. And you used to do like photo reviews. Now it's just like you've grown so big that people just leverage you for that like brand. And I don't think we'll ever see anybody like that in the WordPress space specifically. You know, the closest one in like web design, web world that I can think of is maybe Chris Doe from The Future in like his brand, but he's still very much like, you know, leading community and doing all that stuff. So he's still very like, you know, rolling up his sleeves and doing the work. I don't think we'll ever see that in WordPress. However, I don't mind the WordPress creator. It's a bit of a tangent, but I don't mind the WordPress creator that does a brand deal for the money, as long as you're like transparent and you're upfront about it, and you
Certainly.
you actually like the product, right?
Yeah, we got to talk about the money part. Yeah, keep going.
Yeah, like as long as you like the product and you're not selling something scammy or like reviewing something scammy. But I don't know, like if you know any other like piece of software that like right now I have Screen Studio in front of me, which is a recording app on Mac for screencasts. I only use it when I have like a really short screencast that I want to do because it's not the greatest like long form editing tool. However, like if they came to me and they're like, we would love to do a sponsored video for you, I would do it. And, you know, present it to the audience because in my audience, there are other content creators out there. So I would find it useful. Descript or, you know, something like that, something tangentially related to the work that we do. You know, so I don't mind if somebody is going for the money, as long as it's honest, you know, truthful, and you believe in whatever it is that you're promoting.
Yeah, so this goes back to the thing where I was talking about like having a brand versus you're just running with your name. So there's some relation there. The beautiful part about doing your name is because humans connect with humans very, very easily. I mean, if you just, I'm creating videos on my name and it's like people look at me and they can watch me. They don't like hate anything instinctually just like about like what I'm doing. Then, you know, it's a very boom. It's like, oh, I know Mark. Yeah, I watch him all the time. Like that's like, I watch Casey Neistat. I watch, you know, it's like, it's a very, very connecting thing. The problem or the potential con with that is if you only get one name, let's change it, but you only get one name. So you have to be very cognizant of the integrity portion of that. And certainly people make mistakes and you know, certain mistakes you can apologize for or whatever, or fix up. But my thing is regarding this, like, I do agree with what you're saying. I don't have a problem. I have affiliate links. I'm doing sponsorships. I make sure that I'm transparent as possible. I think everybody should have like an affiliate and sponsorship policy, like on their website or something, because I think that's a really good way to just be like, hey, if you don't like what I'm doing, I'm telling you every single time, if you're like giving me shit for it, just go over here and look at this. And this is exactly what I believe. And this is exactly who I take money from, who I don't take money from, and my policy on that. So a lot of things that I've seen, like really good ones that I've kind of compiled, and I'm working on one for myself. So like those types of things I think are really good. And then to bring it into the money conversation, we cannot be, you got to, like, anybody that criticizes this, you got to be careful being like extremely emotional or holier than thou on any of these arguments, because this takes a lot of time, regardless of if you like the content, you don't like the content, where you stand on a content creator. Most content takes a long time to produce. Like, yeah, you could just put it up and not edit it or whatever. It's at least taking time though. Like, it's at least taking half an hour or whatever. If you edit, you do any post-production, pre-planning, I mean, that's a lot of work. Like it is not, if you're thinking about getting into content, it is not like an easy thing. It's easier if you like it, if you're interested in it, if you're curious in it, but it's not like easy. It's not like you just snap your fingers and it's done. It is a job. So what does that mean? That either means you need to get paid from the content directly somehow, sponsorships, affiliates, partnerships, whatever, brand deals, which is all fine, again, as long as those other things are taken care of, transparency and all that. But the other thing though, and I'll cite like an Alex Hormozy, yeah, sure, he like makes money possibly from the content ad revenue or something like that. But your other model is like the content is like kind of like a lead magnet to a certain degree. But you have to make sure that the people watching the content are the people that are actually going to be your customers. And the reason this goes back to WordPress is because it's kind of like not the case a lot of times, because the stuff that I'm saying per se, or the stuff like you're saying, Matt, is like, okay, well, we're telling people how to use WordPress. Now, certainly some beginners might pick that up, but a lot of developers and like agency owners are going to pick it up. And then it's like, they watched it. That's great. They love us. That's awesome. How are we going to get money from them? You know what I mean? Like, just as that was too straight up of a way to say that, but I'm saying like, it's not like they're really our ideal customer unless we have an offer for them. If you're an agency owner, then you need to be making content. There's people that do this really well, but you need to be making more content for like why you need a website or that type of thing. So you got to be cognizant of that. I'm definitely not a poster child for that. I'm in a different phase right now with some of that stuff. But those are the meta things of like making content, actually taking the time to do it properly, everything like that, and then making money from it in 1, 2, way 1, 2, or 3 or whatever. So there's a lot of things to consider there as you continue to go through that.
Yeah, I mean, you and I talk about this stuff offline a lot about like how are you going to monetize your content, and what are the advantages of direct sponsorship like I do versus affiliates versus the membership stuff and product stuff. I've tried them all. I've tried them all literally, and the only one that I'm effective at is the direct sponsorship sale, like going in front of somebody and saying, look, my audience trusts me. You can see my body of work over a decade. And if you want this kind of stuff to continue and want your brand to align, your brand sentiment or synergy to align with the stuff that I'm doing, then this is why you should support me. It's not your typical, pay-per-click play. It's not, am I going to make $1.25 with every dollar that I spend with Matt and the WP Minute? It is not that, because the audience isn't that large. And I do want to talk about, why that's good and why that's bad. Is because you do have what's good, because you have that sort of editorial control, and it does keep that integrity and that trust really locked in with the audience. The bad is like when you get in front of, a new web host. I won't name names, but a lot of like up and coming, new web hosts are, knock on the door, they want to do this thing, but they're really in the mode of like growth and how do we just get more customers? So when I talk to them, or any product, doesn't have to be hosting, like plugins, themes, services, whatever, like they're in this growth mode. So they immediately just have like this budget and they're like, all right, we got 5,000 to spend. Like, how are we going to make 5,500? It's like, well, it's not going to happen here, right? Mm-hmm. This is, supporting independent journalism, or call it independent journalism, public radio, like whatever moniker you want to throw at it. That's what this is, because not many people, do the deep dive stuff that I do, which again, the other edge of that sword is, there's not a huge audience for it. It's a very impactful audience. It's a very important audience. They're the decision makers in the community and other business owners, and who are also influencing other folks, but they're not like spending their dollars per se, because they're deep rooted or they have their own solutions, or they're just already there. They're a mature audience. You're not giving them or influencing them to pick your thing because it's bright and shiny and it's faster, cheaper, or whatever. One of the things that I put in the footer of my newsletter today is, which hasn't gone out yet, is the fact, like I feel like every summer, always adjusting. Like I feel like summertime for me is that adjustment level. It's probably usually because taking vacations more, spending more time with the kids because they're not in school. So I start thinking about like, where is this thing going, and then ramping up for like that seasonality push, which is heading into whatever, fall, holidays, yada yada yada, and you're like getting yourself into that reset mode of like, how am I going to push when the summer ends before the holidays hit, so that I can like make an impact on the business. And so anyway, like I'm thinking about like restructuring. And when I started the WP Minute, the idea was like, oh, I just want to do short form because everyone was doing long form. And, I just thought it as a different market opportunity to come out with something short form and also give myself a break, with air quotes, a break to not have to do so much heavy lifting of content. And it just parlayed into like this bigger thing, of course. But now just like reevaluating that and be like, you know what, this deep dive into the community stuff, the stress that I put on myself every single week to come up with a 5-minute monologue, which seems like, it should be pretty easy. And it is. It's easy when there's a lot of stuff happening. Like I joked with you, like, where the hell have you been, Mark? It's been a week. You've been pretty quiet because there's not a lot of stuff happening. Right? There's not a lot of things going on. We talked about everything already last week. This week was kind of slow. And it usually is in the summertime. So that 5 minutes of like pressure I put on myself to like, what am I going to talk about? It's going to be super impactful that other people don't talk about. And then on the flip side of that is like, man, it's like such a small audience that it almost feels like I write all this stuff and I pressure myself every week to do this. Does anyone care? Right? Versus if I put out a WordPress 6.6 video, when WordPress 6.6 hits and thousands of people watch it and comments and all this stuff. And from like the creator, like monkey brain, I'm just like, that was way more satisfactory than, sitting there and like thinking critical of like, how Mullenweg should reshape automatic, and what that means to open source in the open web, when other people are like, I don't even want to think about that. And they just like skip the article. I was like, man, I've been like, this is years of work that I just put into this, like 5 minutes, and you don't care about it. But from the business perspective, like, I understand that is my, that's my fault. So anyway, going back to what's in the newsletter today is me just saying, look, it's me just like lifting this weight off my shoulders and being like, I'm not going to do that anymore. Like, I'm still going to do it. And it's not going to be every week. Right. And I need to say it out loud so that I'm okay with it. And so I can be like, I said I'm not going to do it anymore. And then technically it also means like, I don't know what I'm technically going to do with the 5-minute WP Minute podcast. I might reroute it to the WP Minute Plus and rename the whole podcast altogether for just like branding purposes. Because what I really like are these long form discussions. And ultimately, I think that's where folks know me most is, the podcaster who's been here for a while talking to people. And I want to like lean back into that, I think. Because you see these posts come up, the best WordPress newsletters, the best WordPress, YouTube channels. You're like, man, I do all that. Like, why am I not on this list? Right? But then you look at the best podcast and it's like, oh, it's Matt Report, WP Minute. So it's just like, okay, it's just this brand thing. People just see me as a podcaster, maybe not specifically a newsletter as much as I try, to get that content out there. So summer restructuring, notice myself on that same plateau and saying to myself, all right, it's time to shift gears, because the real money, which we were talking about, is in that generalized content for WordPress. It's in the YouTube tutorials. It's in the helpful content, and maybe the over analytical stuff should be reserved for, not so often. Like, I still want to do it. I don't want to give up on it, but I'm just not going to pressure myself to like do that every single time, because really, if I can make helpful content, it's helping more WordPressers at the end of the day, which is really what I want. Like, I really want to help people with this stuff, and maybe the overcritical stuff is just too much for people to handle.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's part of that conversation is just like you said, how many people actually care about those things per se. Like, what is your actual, you're not going to get everyone, obviously. You're not going to get like 7 billion people. You're not going to even get all of the people that use WordPress, because not all the people who use WordPress care about that type of thing. So like, and then you just continue to break it down. Like, and then even the people that do care about it, the stuff you're talking about, maybe for whatever reason they don't like you. And I'm not picking on you. I'm just saying maybe they don't like you. Maybe they don't like the content. Maybe
it's
they don't
a well-known
like the fucking
fact,
name or the name or something. You know what I mean? It's like it's just marketing. It's just like influence. It's like it's very sometimes there's no rhyme or reason to it. You just kind of have to like break it down to that point. It's like, I do think though that people early on their content creation journey might have that misconception. It's important to learn that very quickly, that you have to understand, because I did this, and I still do this kind of in the agency realm, but in the content side of it, I'm like, okay, I want like 1 million subscribers or whatever. Like, people say, oh, we want to be like so-and-so, we want to have 1 million subscribers. Well, it's like, depending on what you're actually interested in and, somewhat qualified, so to speak, to like talk about, that might not literally be possible. So like, depending on what you're talking about, how deep you're talking about, the nuances, there might just not be 1 million people that give a shit about what you're saying. And the sooner you realize that, the sooner you can lean into actually talking about what those people and you and those other maybe 1,000, couple 100,000, whatever people care about. And then that's like really kind of interesting where that can go. Because in my mind, one of the things that I've seen is like, if you think about the person, like an individual, we'll just keep it as an individual. Like, if you think about an individual that's like classified as like an influencer, obviously that term is whatever, but like somebody that speaks, a content creator or somebody that speaks online, if they say something, if they're well known enough and they say something, let's say they normally talk about like business and they say something about like relationships, right off the bat now, because you've consumed so much content, even though it's been in the business realm, if they say something about relationships, you're automatically going to have like you're going to hold their opinion to a higher standard because of all the other stuff that you've listened to over in this other category. So what I kind of have deduced that is, I used to try to be really generalist about the stuff. Like, I have really good opinions about this topic and this rather random topic and this one, because I'm interested in it, I'm a human and I'm like exploring every topic. The trouble is, then you can't find anyone. So if you niche down kind of to a WordPress type thing, for instance, then you branch back out as you grow potentially. I think that's a strategy that I've seen have success for people. And you don't even need it, Nick. I'm not even saying you have to branch back out, but I'm just saying like that seems, you have to build the rapport in a very siloed way, it seems like. And then from there you can continue to do it. So, and again, I'm not saying this is the only strategy. I'm just saying this is stuff that I've seen. But yeah, I mean, but again, going back to all of it, you have to want to do it. You have to believe that it's a good idea. You have to believe that you can do it. And you always have to be ready to like literally fail with every single video or blog post or whatever, because there are some days where your live stream, like a live stream, mine just doesn't get as many people watching it for whatever reason. And sometimes it's not even your fault entirely. You know, it might just be like a busy day or something. So
Yeah.
you can't be super emotional about it either. It's like,
Yeah. Yeah. And I've constantly, like, just as a creator, you know, it's also the same personality that I lead with when I criticize like WordPress is like, I don't know, it's just like the same way that I lead things where my own content creation, like I don't want to be just this one person doing just this one thing. I am not good at that. Like, I'm good at consistency, like, because I haven't given up on WordPress content creation for over a decade. What I'm not good at is like the same thing over and over and over again, which, you know, Jonathan from the Tonic, you know, had mentioned something. I think it was like when the first time you were on his live stream and you brought it up and he was like, oh, you know, I've been, you know, Matt's been doing it for a while, but I've been doing like consistently, I have like more episodes. And he's right. He probably has collectively
crazy amount of content.
Yeah. Crazy amount of episodes, but that's because number one, like I never did the same thing over and over and over again because I just get tired of it. And then I get in my head, I'm like, if I'm tired of it, other people are tired of it. So I was never one to be like, I'm just going to do this same format over and over and over again. I want to creatively change things, which is how like the Matt report evolved. Like at beginning, it was just like, I'm going to talk to people because I need to learn same exact thing as you. I need to talk to people to learn what the hell is happening in this WordPress space because I see people getting big clients and I want to get those big clients too. I just don't know how they're doing it. And I did that for like 2 years to grow the agency. And I was like, oh, I've figured it out. Like I figured out how to make connections. I figured out who the players are. I know where the other agencies are. And then it became more of like, you know, when I was starting to create products and plugins and themes. And I was just, okay, now I'm going to leverage it for that. So let's build in public with the podcast. And then after that, it was just like, okay, how do I turn this into a community? And I started the Matt Report Pro, which was, you know, a community like we know communities today, and, you know, still trying to run an agency and like talking about things like that. And then it was like, oh my God, I'm having kids and now I need a real job. So then it was just like, okay, like I have to change things up, you know, and do all these different things. So like I'm ever evolving this content position that I'm in, and I'm okay with it. And, you know, when I see like other people doing well, sure, do I get jealous? Like, you know, our friend Paul Charlton, 150,000 subscribers or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I would love that too. But then I look at what Paul's doing and he's only doing YouTube, like as far as content, right? I mean, maybe he has his blog and newsletter and stuff like that, but I don't even hear him talk about it. I just see him showing up and doing YouTube, and that has worked for him to like grow that audience. And do I get jealous of it? Yeah, of course I do. As like a content creator, I'm competitive and I'm like, I could do that too. But would I have been satisfied doing it all these years? Probably not. Because I did hit a level of burnout when I started my YouTube channel where I didn't even open up my YouTube dashboard for over a year. Because same thing, I was like, this sucks. I don't want to do this. And, you know, let me just go back to the podcast because I love that more. So anyway, just this evolution of like my content and competing with other people. And, you know, I'm sure we all go through this. I'm sure you go through it. Like when you look at the landscape to be like, God, if I did this, could I be like them? You know, and you just have to, you know, find your own path. Anything more systematic, and I would just like hate it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, and we go back to the opportunity thing. You know, when you're hot, you got to take advantage of that. That's very real. There's also, I mean, I truly believe that there's also like a level of, I don't know if luck is the right word, but there's definitely an aspect of timing, you know, right? Like, cause like depending on when you started making like WordPress content, I would say you in general, like depending on when somebody starts making like WordPress content, like maybe there were more people that were at, you know, like flocking to YouTube for that specific reason. Maybe YouTube is still kind of trending upward, but maybe there was like a boom before to a certain degree. There's also, again, like you said earlier, when there's less saturation, there's less options, and that's just that super is super impactful there. I mean, this is one of the reasons where, like, I think about WordPress and I think about how, you try to like predict how it might change or move forward, which is difficult, but like, the advent of AI and such, those types of things, like, are they going to have any impact? That's why I need to at least hear about the topics that are in their infancy, so to speak. I don't necessarily want to be an early adopter of everything, but I need to like have my finger on the pulse of kind of like what's going on there. So hopefully I can kind of like maybe feel it out as it starts to, take way and take traction, and then be like I think that's literally how most, again, regardless of what your goals are, you might have different goals, but like, I think that's how, like, take a ridiculous example of like Jeff Bezos and Amazon. Like, they were selling books, like and it was just timing, and it was how it went. And then he was like, all right, well, let's keep doing this. And like, we're selling books, now we're selling other stuff. And it's like, it just so happened that there was no such thing as Amazon. The internet was about to pop off. He kind of saw that. He started selling literally books, and then he's like, well, we could sell other stuff too. And then you just continue to roll from there. I know that was like a separate example, but it's kind of the same thing with this content, because people make content for a living, surely, but there also is other pieces to it. I mean, you run the WP Minute, like, it's a business. It's not just content. I mean, the content is a big part of it, but the content is one of the main pieces, but there's a lot more to it. So I think it's just, like you said, you have to observe what other people are doing and kind of carve your own way through it too.
Yeah. Multiple streams of revenue for sure are super important. Again, that's why I just go back to sponsorships. I know there are people that do, great with memberships. Membership's super tough. It's its own challenge, right? There's the challenge of like building the audience and then selling the membership. So even at the WP Minute, if you go to the wpminute.com/support, you can join as an annual supporting member for $79 a year. Or if you donate, you can also join the Slack channel. And really, it's just like your pledge of $79 is to be like, hey, really like what you do. It'd be no different if you were a business and you wanted to sponsor a podcast. It's sort of like an individual sponsorship level to be like, yeah, every year I'll give you $79 to support the cause of, this effort that you have. But you can also join the Slack channel for $5 and just one time. And, the running a membership requires just so much more focus and energy, which as a full-time employee and part-time content creator, there's no way I can also run a membership too, at least in my opinion, because the best memberships that I've been a part of are the ones where the person who's running it is also ultra engaged and there's ultra value on the other end of that membership. In the beginning, it's fun, it's exciting, you get to come in and network and see what's behind the closed door. But as a consumer, you're just like, okay, I after month 2, you're like, I did all of it. Like, now what? Video game's over. I beat the game. Like, what's the end game? Like, what else can I do after this? And I think, to me, at least that's what goes on in my head, which is why having been my second go at memberships has been pretty tough, because I just don't have the time and the energy to focus on what else I can do, for that membership. Aside from, we have the Slack channel, aside from, connecting with other folks, like, if you're in the Slack channel, there's people I've connected other people to as value, and then doing like, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, we did like a little side chat, which is actually something I want to do more of for the WP Minute members, is just like, hey, as this collective group right here who love to talk about WordPress news, and that's the focus, let's just all get on a call and just talk about stuff that's happening in the space. And we can all ask each other questions and get our opinions and whatnot. But anyway, all that is to say is, like, running a membership, you got to do so much more to get that value. Courses and education, or I should say courses, is something I haven't done yet. I do want to explore something around that for the WP Minute. I don't think it would be a charged thing or something I charge for. It might be on like the value for value system, which is like, if you value this work, then, give me $5 or give me $50, like whatever you find valuable for this content, let's roll that way, instead of just saying like, this course is $100 or $1,000, like whatever it is. So that is something I have yet to explore, though I do have some ideas for it for the WP Minute, but also still got to roll up your sleeve and do the work. Like, you still got to make the thing and have people enjoy it, right? And market it and keep that wheel going, because otherwise no one sees it, regardless of your audience size. So definitely some challenges, but I think a lot of folks who are exploring the WordPress content creation space, can get can build a healthy business off of multiple revenue streams, because you're not going to get it from YouTube ads.
True.
That's for sure. You need to get considerably more content than that, or considerably more eyeballs than that to make money on YouTube ads. And in fact, in an episode that might be out already by the time the listener's hearing this, I interviewed Doc Pop, who was a managing editor of Torque Mag for WP Engine for like 10 years. I thought it was 8, but it was 10 years. And now he's an independent WordPress content creator. And he just did a partnership with WordPress.com doing a highly produced series on the Fediverse, exploring what the Fediverse is, what it means, how folks can connect up to it, and all this other stuff. There's plenty of opportunity in this space. Like WordPress product companies, they need marketers. They need content. Do they have the budget for it is another question. But they sorely need it. And I think, like you said at the top of the show, the human connection is what's going to win out. And these brands need to work with folks like you and I and others. So it's a great time for us, but also a competitive time for us.
Yeah, certainly. I think just going back there for a second, because I think that's a really important thing to understand if you're getting into content, like what you can do, like the ways that you can leverage your influence, your audience, things like that or whatever. So obviously just making content, you can get ad revenue straight up via YouTube or whatever. Maybe they could pay directly for content, I guess, is one other way, depending on how you want to slice it. Talked about sponsorships. We talked about, maybe we brushed on affiliate. So affiliate is like, you say something and you're not getting paid to say it, but you're getting paid when people buy it, so to speak, is generally the way. You get a commission. We talked about courses there. We talked about memberships, which was like a community-based approach, membership to be a part of a community. Consulting is another one that I've seen, whether it's private, like one-on-one, or like group consulting or something like that. I'm just saying, like, as you build up, and these are all things that I've considered and I've partially built out some of them, right? So it's like, and I know you've tried a ton of them. So like those are at least 5 there, different ways that whatever one resonates with you, all of them, whatever. But again, like you said, some of them are way more intense than others. Like a consulting call might just be more or less like an hour of your time, but a membership platform is like a ton of time. Sponsorship, as we both know, like that could be a ton of time just making it happen initially, and then after that you got to see what happens on that end. Are there any other mechanisms that I'm missing?
Merchandise, swag, t-shirts, stuff like that. There's collectively, like as a content creator, if you're doing omni-channel, which is what I do, which is audio, video, newsletter, blog, social, and you actually have like 5 distinct, areas in that. Because as a podcasting purist, a lot of people say, oh, I have a YouTube channel, which is also a podcast. I get it. But podcasting is really like audio first medium, distributed on all podcast, players, because it's 2 different ways that people can experience that content. So if you have a true like omni-channel thing, like now you have, did I include newsletter in there? Now you have these areas that you can stack as an offering, right, to other brands. So what I'm saying is, like, don't shortchange yourself, because brands could want to get exposure on your YouTube channel, but maybe not on your podcast. But maybe there are brands that want to be on your podcast. Maybe there are brands that only want newsletter, right? So when you look at it and you zoom out and you say, okay, as a content creator, I have all of these areas of distribution. Now, how do I fill those gaps, or how do I offer those as valuable spots to, my audience? So,
Kinda
or
like
my brands.
Package it up too would be extremely vital. I would say like the whole packaging thing, you've brought that up to me before. I need to spend more time on that once you kind of get to that, like whether it be sponsorship specific or just like literally it's like creating it's like a good analogy is like when you're an agency and you're creating your website care plan. It's kind of like that type of thing, but instead your customer isn't a business that wants your service. It's a business that wants, eyeballs and those types of things. So it's just kind of creating your offer, but it's for a different type of client this time, basically a different type of customer, which is tough at first because you don't really know probably like at all, I feel like it's a little bit more, it's definitely more foreign for somebody like me that hasn't like ever had to pitch anybody on, hey, I have people that watch my stuff, you know, like, do you want those people to know about your product? It's just a new frontier, I feel like, for a lot of people.
It's not something I'm putting words in your mouth, but it's not something you're afraid of. Like, it's not something you're afraid to do, because I want to end with this topic here is something that I riffed on last week, or I forget, earlier this week, because I've been seeing it for years, is like the indie product maker, plugin, theme, service, whatever, ebook, where they're just like, I'm not a good salesperson. I don't know what to do. Like, I don't know how to like do this marketing thing. And then only to see them, I know it's an unfortunate situation. It sounds harsh, where it's just like only to see them like 6 months to a year later, be like, I could never do this thing. Like, I could never figure this thing out. Like, I could never make my business work because I'm not a good salesperson. I'm not a good marketer. Well, for me, it's like that first step is to observe, like, to stop thinking of marketing in like this in the WordPress space anyway. Stop thinking of it in a numbers game, which a lot of us like lean on. We say, oh, it's just a numbers game. You just got to get out there. Like, when you're looking to connect and build relationships, don't look at it as a numbers game. Zoom out and see like whatever the 50 content creators that there are in the WordPress space, like who show up every week or every month and do this thing, and build your like relationships with each and every one of them in a very unique way, right? Reach out, talk to me, talk to Mark, figure out what it is that we can do together to promote your product or business. If you're not going to do like the whole content marketing thing yourself, like if you can't do it, you have to bring it to somebody like us. I mean, if you're not going to hire like a big agency, because you probably don't have the budget, but you can work with an independent content creator, maybe there's opportunity there in different ways to get your product out there. And it drives me crazy when I see people do that and say things like, I'm not a good salesperson, this is not working, but I never hear from them ever. You know, and pitch me your product, pitch it well, don't waste my time, right? Give me a reason to interview you or showcase your thing, but reach out and have that pitch, at least on a one-on-one scenario. Like, you at least work on it that way. If you're afraid to like sell to the masses, okay, but one-on-one, email, connect, and make that pitch. I've also seen the inverse of people who think that they've got it all, together, and then, you know, think that people are just going to cover their product because they're a veteran product maker and they've launched products before. And of course you should want to, you know, partner with me because I've launched a product before and I've had success, and you certainly want to cover my product again. No, because now I know that you know what you're doing and you have the money. You should be sponsoring. At the very least, you should be buying $79 a year to have an account in the WP Minute Slack, so you can network with other people and let them know that you've launched the product. So I've seen it on like both sides, but certainly like the beginners, if you're really struggling with that sales and marketing thing, reach out to us content creators and build a relationship. You might not get a series of videos from Mark, but maybe he'll talk about you in a segment of his live stream or do some other like creative, but you know, at least try, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah, so I'm pretty empathetic to that.
Really? That's the first time I've heard you be empathetic to.
What? What the fuck? You haven't been listening long enough, buddy. I've definitely shown empathy before, but I would say I'm empathetic specifically to that because the part where the kind of the premise of what you're saying there, where like people are like, I can build a great product. Basically what you're saying is I'm a developer, but I'm not a salesperson. I'm empathetic to that because I have always tried to be like the unicorn, like the one person that does everything. And I've started to realize that as I've talked to other people, made more connections, and just tried to do more things, that like I am, for instance, not a designer. I am not really a developer per se, even though my mind's slightly more in that camp. I do think like I have a reasonable skill level at like creating content, talking and critical thinking and like strategizing a lot of the stuff. So that is where like I feel like my value is. Now, the key to this is that when somebody says that they're a developer and they're not a salesman, they're not a marketer, they have to have that self-awareness to be like, okay, well, I need to go find that. And again, it's kind of the pot calling the kettle black because I've done this in the past, but I'm just saying, like, I'm echoing what you're saying. Like, you need to create that connection, that partnership, and go do that, because literally, it's just like, when you look at it really objective, it's like you're actually spending a ton of time like working on the product. You can't really be expected to fully market the thing as well. You could, but the one thing I will say though, as a caveat to this, or just like a little asterisk, is that a lot of times what I see, the product owners and developers that I've seen like with their products, they know their products very well, obviously. They're most of the time they're developing and not creating the content. But if you bring them onto a show and you have somebody that's curious as the content creator or whatever, we've done this many times over on my channel, and like, we even do it basically over on Matty Eastwood's channel in the Bridge Builder series to a certain degree. Like, we're just basically asking questions. And a lot of times it's harder to create something out of thin air and like create like a big script for a video or whatever than it is just have a conversation. And people love the conversations. So it's like, it's a beautiful mix of all that. And hopefully they get some awareness. People in the audience, like the product resonates with them. They learn something, maybe they go try it, right? And you could leverage that a million different ways. You could do affiliate links. You could do a straight up sponsorship for that type of thing. Like whatever it is, it's just, whatever the arrangement is, whatever the partnership is. I understand, empathetic to the budget, especially at first. If you're trying to get something off the ground, it's difficult to like deploy funds into, the marketing side of stuff. But you got to be, these like indie developers, some of them do it like better, some of them do it like some of them do it really well. You have to at least stand behind your product. You know what I mean? Like, you have to at least be very confident enough to go on a live stream or a video and just talk about what you built. You don't have to be a crazy good marketer. None of these CEOs of these big companies are like incredibly great, fantastic communicators, but they are there. Somebody's got to be the face of your thing. So yeah, I'm always about that. Definitely hit me or Matt up if you're ever interested in, if you're listening or anybody or whatever trying to do that type of stuff, because I think it's good for everyone.
The thing I would add to that is there's not a lot of, so like if you don't have a budget, what I would really like to see, and this will be my last soapbox moment here for like defending the content creators, because one of the most challenging things is you spend time with somebody, you promote their product, and then they're just like, see you later, bye. And they don't even like tweet out the episode or LinkedIn post about like showing up. They don't do a blog post about it. Like, number one, from a content marketing perspective, you're just missing a huge opportunity to repurpose content that somebody else produced for you. Like, even the most basic of like a blog post would be like, hey, I appeared on the WP Minute, or I was on Mark Szymanski's live stream, like whatever it is. Like, I mean, it's literally you talking. You can download that clip or that audio and make audiograms. Like, there's plenty of freaking things you can do. So it blows my mind that anybody can do.
I got to stop you there for a second though, because the one thing I would say is, like, just to get meta a little bit, if you're not a marketer, you're not going to think of that. Like, so you have to be like told to think of that. You have to be almost like like it's second nature to you and I, but to a lot of other people, it's not. So like, I'm playing a little bit of devil's advocate and just defending the other side in a sense, because I do completely agree with what you're saying. I just think that's like 101, but you have to know it. You know what I mean? If you're not like a marketing mind, but keep going. Yeah. Sorry.
I just wanted true. And that could be the issue, but I do know a lot of people who are savvy marketers that are doing the whole like content, marathon track on purpose, because they know how good it is, but they don't even share it. Or, sharing it, or like if you have nothing to trade, like if it's like, I don't have a lot of money to spend on this, then definitely do that. Like, lead with that and say, look, I would love to do like you to do a video for me. Don't have a lot of budget. Maybe I can give you a few $100s to do this, or a better affiliate link or something, but I will definitely like tweet it out 5 times for that week. Every single day, I'll make a different tweet or a different reference to it. I'll write a blog post about it, put it in my newsletter. Maybe I have a press page on my site, and I'll definitely link you there, so that, try to like at least do some of that stuff, because it's a great way, to say thanks. And it is valuable. Like, it's valuable for people who land on your website that want to learn more about you, because my God, I don't know how many times in the WordPress world I go to a website and like, who is behind this? Like, what company, who? I'm not going to, 1, recommend you, or 2, how would anybody ever buy anything from you if they don't even know about like who you are and what you do? Maybe I'm just that kind of consumer that needs to do like that background research first, but blows my mind that so many people just don't expose themselves to their customer, unless they have just an amazing product and they don't need to, I guess. But a lot of them are trying to get this thing off the ground, and it's just a perfect opportunity to use that, to repurpose that content, to share more about them. But I digress. I get off that soapbox, right, as a content creator. Oh boy, great conversation today, Mark. As always, where can folks find you on the web?
Yeah, Matt, appreciate you having me, man. Thanks so much. Yeah, if you guys want to check out more of my stuff, if you just type in mjs.bio, you will see all my links to my socials, my website, stuff like that. Yeah, pleasure being here, man. Thank you so much.
TheWPMinute.com, TheWPMinute.com/subscribe. Because, hey, I do a newsletter. Goes out to a few thousand people. It's a newsletter. I'd like to be on the top newsletter, WordPress news newsletters, roundups on these blog posts that people put out. Get it at TheWPMinute.com/subscribe. And if you want to support the show and join that Slack channel for as little as $5, TheWPMinute.com/support. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Thanks for reading. Thanks for being there. This episode of the WP Minute is brought to you by OmniSend. Do you sell stuff online? Then you need to meet OmniSend, the powerful yet refreshingly intuitive email and SMS tool that helps you make $73 for every dollar spent. OmniSend is that good and effective. You probably know the struggles of investing in digital ads with no guarantee it'll bring money back into your pocket. Use OmniSend and you won't have to find creative ways to make your audience notice you. You just talk straight to them. Use OmniSend pop-ups to build a contact list and send campaigns directly to people who already want to hear from you. Automate everything with OmniSend. Just set it up once, sit back, and watch those sales roll in. If this sounds too good to be true, check it out at omnisend.com. Visit omnisend.com. Tell them thanks for sponsoring the WP Minute.